Hello again, everybody, and welcome inside the VIBELAND Sports Studios. I'm Todd Miller, along with Casady Fletcher and Kelby Peterson. It's episode 27 of VIBELAND Sports. We'll give you our fan poll results from last week. We'll give you a new fan poll question this week, and we've got a whole lot to get to. I want to remind you, have a very interesting guest coming up next week. Grant Gower, the former high school football coach, most recently the offensive coordinator at Oklahoma Baptist. But that's not why we're going to have him here. He is now the director of officiating for the Oklahoma Secondary Schools Activities Association. There's a lot going on with officials in Oklahoma. We're going to get the director's opinion on how to solve some of the issues involving the shortage of officiating. That's next week here on what will be episode 28. Guys, not much of a college football weekend, but it was a heck of a weekend for the season opener in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, man. I was glued to the TV on Sunday.
Yeah, I was pretty checked out on Saturday when it came to football. A lot of the matchups that I cared about were, not much of a matchup. And I was very happy for Sunday to come around and got to spend pretty much the whole day watching football, and golly, it always reminds me that why the NFL is still the top dog, because they put out an incredible product.
That's why they can get by with some of the issues on and off the field with some of their players, because everybody does like professional football. We're going to talk about our surprises, our disappointments from week one of the NFL season. We're also going to talk about, you get it, Antonio Brown. He has resurfaced with the New England Patriots, 1 year, $15 million this year with a $20 million option for 2020. We're also going to give you our top 5 teams currently in Major League Baseball as the season winds down in its final 4 weeks. Let's start, though, with college football, and I know there's not a lot to talk about from last week. As we discussed, it was Cupcake City, OU 70-14 over South Dakota in a game in which most of the starters played just a half. Oklahoma State, we'll start with MKP, got off to a little bit of a slow start, but really got things rolling in the second half and handled a McNeese State team kind of the way they should have.
I mean, absolutely. The first drive, was the tone set of the game. McNeese State rolls out, and I think on the second play of the game, it's a pick six for OSU. I called him out on the podcast last week. I said A.J. Green did not play well last week, and play 2, he takes a pick to the house for 6, and it was pretty just much smooth sailing from there for OSU. We did have offensively in the first half. We did have a few drives that stalled a little quicker than you would like. Didn't play up to our standards for sure, but the second half turned it on and went rolling like they should. So not much to see or talk about there. It was just a dominant performance like it should have been, and unfortunate that the offense took a little bit to get going, but you expect that with a freshman quarterback this time of the year.
Mike Gundy said this week that he was a little surprised with how flat they actually came out. Were you surprised how flat they played?
Yes and no. Yes in the fact that, no, I'm not surprised, because they were human beings, and they knew that they were going out to play McNeese State. So you want us, as a fan, you want to see your team get up for that. But it was obvious from the first drive that they knew who they were playing. They were looking at the name of the jersey across from them and knew that it wasn't anybody special and big. And, normally that happens when we play OU. We look across and see the jersey and get afraid and play not well because of the jersey on the other team. But this week we looked across, saw it was an inferior opponent, and we played that way. Just like I was kind of giving the warning to OU's defense last week is to not play that way. OSU could have taken the same advice, because they sure looked like they didn't trust, or they didn't respect that team across from them to start off the game. And looks like the coaches got after him midway through the second quarter there, and they turned it on. But, yeah, I was a little surprised to see him come out flat, but at the same time, if I'm being honest with myself, I wasn't surprised, because it was McNeese State, and you hate to see it, but it happened.
Speaking of OU's defense, Casady, that's one thing that we said on the podcast last week. We wanted to see how they would bounce back after a disappointing second half against Houston. Now, Houston's a pretty good offensive football club, but OU played well, I thought, for the most part, in the first half against the Cougars. You have an undermanned, undersized team coming into Norman. Are you going to let them get points, or are you going to dominate? And really, they dominated the Coyotes.
Oh, my goodness, yes. All the takeaways, that's what I liked seeing the most. It just seemed like consistently when the defense needed a big stop, they weren't just getting stops. They were actually flipping the field for the offense. They were getting a couple of interceptions, diving on some fumbles. I was very pleased with the way that the defense was able to come out there and do what it was supposed to. On the offensive side of the football, I mean, look, it's against South Dakota, and you know that Jalen Hurts and that offense can just run over about anybody in the country. And, I mean, they did it for the first half. Then in the second half, it was kind of cool to see all these different possible future quarterbacks and future combinations that we're going to be seeing for years to come. Really get a chance to all share the field together and kind of get a coming out party for some of those other guys that are not going to get a whole lot of playing time this season.
From what highlights I saw, and he wasn't asked to do much, but Spencer Rattler, the number one recruit coming in at quarterback last year, is a true freshman, got some snaps, probably will only play in 4 games max this year. But he looked pretty good doing what they asked him to do in a mop-up role.
He absolutely did. You can see why he was the number one dual threat quarterback coming out of high school. And the guy has all the tools that you need to play at a very elite level. He just now needs to get some more reps, continue to do what he did. Obviously, he can play against the likes of a team like South Dakota if that was, maybe a Big 12 opponent, really any of them. I'd like to see what that would look like whenever he's got a little bit more pressure that he's going to be facing.
Let me ask you guys this. Were you surprised to see him rolled out this early in the season? Yes, with the new 4-game rule, the strategy is a little bit different, but are you surprised to see him roll out? And follow-up question to that, if Jalen Hurts goes down with a serious injury, is he the guy that rolls out after that?
I think right now Tanner Mordecai is being prepped as the backup.
As the backup. If Jalen Hurts is hurt, you say
Yes.
Mordecai.
Yes.
But
Here's the deal. Spencer Rattler would probably be the backup had he elected to not continue being in high school, which there's no fault to that.
Yeah.
You have your whole life to be in college and beyond. But he did not come for spring practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think had he been in Norman for spring practice, he probably would be number 2 on the depth chart. But he didn't, so therefore I think Mordecai is clearly the number 2 guy in Norman. The other part of your question is, am I surprised this early? No, because of what the schedule dictated.
Yeah.
Because they were playing an FCS team.
Yeah.
In a normal OU season, yeah, I probably would have been surprised to see him in the second week of the year because OU does not make a habit of playing Division I AA, if you will, or FCS teams. But because the schedule dictated who they were playing, I really thought we would see him in week 2.
Yes.
Yeah, that's just, with this new rule, it's just interesting because you would think you wait till the end of you wait to use them, but I think Lincoln Riley was smart enough to know to be able to look at the schedule and say, hey, this is an opportunity. This is a game he had circled probably on the calendar where, hey, this may be a game where we throw Spencer Rattler out there and see what he can do.
Yeah, and the fact that, that offense, you saw it in week 1, it pretty much did perform exactly the way that you thought it would. They go back out in the first half and just completely dominate again. So at that point, I feel like you've seen the first string guys, what they can do. They're getting their reps. They're into the season now. And so let some of these other guys who are only going to get to play at most 4 games this season, it's a perfect game to do that. Let him go in there. It's almost zero pressure. Heck, they were up like 7 touchdowns by the time those guys got in, and so it was pretty nice just to see those guys have fun and to get their first taste of college football. And they performed up to the level that you would like to see for guys that have been as hyped as they were when they were coming up and being recruited. But again, I still want to put a giant asterisk next to everything that happened because it is South Dakota. So
this is episode 27 of VIBELAND Sports. He's Casady Fletcher. I'm Todd Miller. KP is with us as well here in studio. Don't forget you can follow us on social media at VIBELAND Sports, both on Twitter and Instagram. Also on VIBELAND Sports on Facebook. Casady, we do want to talk about one other thing before we continue. We're going to start having a different release date after this week's show, starting with episode 28. Look for us, however you get your podcasts, starting on Tuesday.
That's right. So we want to shorten the time between when we actually record and when this podcast drops. It just to let everybody know the way that it always has been. We've recorded just about every Monday. Some weeks it's Tuesday, but generally we record on Mondays. And then when that doesn't come out till Wednesday, it just sometimes there's a lot of sports news that happens in that 24 to 36 hours between when we recorded and when the podcast is actually out. So we're just trying to shorten that down. So this one, of course, is out on Wednesday if you're listening to it now. But the next one, look for us in just 6 days because we'll be dropping on Tuesdays from here on out. So expect to find VIBELAND Sports in your feed every Tuesday. If you're already subscribed, great. Thank you so much. And if you're not and you want to continue to follow us, you can go on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever else you get your podcast. We're probably there.
Again, starting next week, episode 28 will start dropping on Tuesday. All right, this is KP's favorite thing that we do. When I always say, this isn't on the board, but let's talk about it.
All right.
Is anybody else tired of talking about the Heisman Trophy?
Yes.
I think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world that we talk about front runners after 1 and 2 weeks because so many of these guys are playing cupcakes. Mm-hmm. You're not playing the same caliber of competition. There's always people that emerge about halfway through the season. But my point is, I truly believe that they eliminate a lot of those players that come on later because there's so much hype early. Mm-hmm. There's some guys that already make up their mind. I promise you, there are Heisman Trophy voters now that know if they're going to vote for Tua, whether they're going to vote for Hurts or Trevor Lawrence. Yep. And we're not even 3 weeks into the college football season. Your thoughts on that?
I agree completely because, I mean, think about just last year even. Kyler Murray, I mean, other people around here might have been the only ones saying, hey, Heisman, but people were sensible enough to say, when I would hear that, they were sensible enough to say, well, it's probably too early to talk about it. But Kyler Murray really wasn't on the Heisman board until about, I don't know, halfway through the season, or the watch list, I guess you would say. Until halfway through the season. So, yeah, I think it's a little ridiculous to look at it this early. One, it's too early in the season. And two, like you said, Todd, all they're doing right now is playing cupcakes. I mean, if Trevor Lawrence had already played Alabama and maybe, I don't know, like another big-time school and he had dominated those performances, hey, let's talk about it. But cupcakes, not yet. Let's talk about the Heisman like week 6, week 8, and even then it's probably a little too early. But the field is more made at that point than it is right now.
You can never tell anybody when they can start talking about it. I don't think you should talk about it until October the 1st.
Yes.
Because, again, the games are not real great early in the season, the first month. Injuries change the way Casady things transpire on down the line in the final 2 months of the regular season, and losses. 1 or 2 losses, and you're gone out of Heisman consideration.
Absolutely. It's a political campaign is what it really is. And, I mean, it starts even in the preseason now and in the season before. People start hyping up this kind of stuff in the spring games. I mean, it's getting out of hand. I think that we shouldn't even talk about it until we start seeing the college football playoff numbers come out, and whenever those are starting to rank, then we have a good baseline of what all these players have done. They've gone through a decent amount of their conference schedules. They've played a lot of different opponents now, and so we can kind of get a better sense of it. But, I mean, early on, I'm seeing people tweeting out, like, Jalen Hurts' stats, and, oh, he's leading in this category, and he's got more rushing yards than any other quarterback, and he's leading in efficiency. I'm like, yeah, but he's played Houston and South Dakota. I mean, that really means nothing if they go out and lose 3 games in the regular season. So my whole thing is, I get why people want to start talking about it early. They want to build that hype up. But
I just think it's an exercise in futility.
It really is. Just like, let's everybody pump the brakes and realize that it's still early in September right now, and there's a lot of football left to play.
I mean, let's think about Chuba Hubbard at Oklahoma State. If he were to go out and continue to have huge games, he might start to get mentioned in October, but I still think it's Tua, Hurts, or Trevor Lawrence because that's who's been talked about and promoted through spring, the offseason, and the first month of the campaign.
Absolutely. I would argue that a majority of the Heisman voters didn't know who Chuba Hubbard was before this season. And everybody, like you said, Todd, the decisions are made ahead of time. I'm not trying to argue for Chuba to be on the Heisman watch right now.
I'm just using him as an example.
Excellent point, though. Your point's well made that guys like him have less of an opportunity because they're not a big-name guy at this particular time. So that just goes to your point that some of these guys' decisions are already made. Other guys aren't getting a fair chance.
All right, this week, a little tougher test, but not much for the Sooners and Cowboys. OU hits the road for the first time. They're in Sunny Los Angeles taking on UCLA. Oklahoma State is at Tulsa. You know, you schedule games years, decades, sometimes 15 years in advance. And while these names look good on the schedule, the programs change, the coaches change. OU, for instance, in the 2030s has Alabama on the schedule. Well, Alabama's still probably going to be pretty good. I'm sure OU's going to be very good too. But the coaches change, seasons and teams go down a little bit. And that's what OU's facing right now with UCLA. They scheduled these games long ago, and the Bruins are horrendous. They were not very good last year. They're worse this year. For example, UCLA has scored 28 points in 2 ball games. OU scored 28 points in a quarter against South Dakota. When we talk about scheduling, OSU is the in-state team that's going to play Tulsa this year. Mm-hmm. I want to know what you guys think about the Sooners and the Cowboys scheduling Tulsa more regularly. And here's why. McNeese State, South Dakota last week. Louisiana, South Dakota. FCS teams, not even FBS teams, which Tulsa is. You're sending $550,000 to Vermillion, South Dakota. Do you think the University of Tulsa couldn't use that money? I think if OU and OSU played TU more regularly, it would help the Golden Hurricane rebuild their program because you're going to get more exposure. And people go, well, they have nothing to gain. Do you think you have anything to gain and everything to lose when you play South Dakota and McNeese State?
Exactly.
If you're worried about OU and OSU losing to Tulsa, which I suppose could happen, there's worse problems for the Cowboys and the Sooners in that year than them playing them anyway. Here's what I think they should do. I think they should do it on a 4-year rotation. And I'll just start this way. Let's say Oklahoma State hosts Tulsa in year 1. In year 2, OU goes to Tulsa. In year 3, Oklahoma State goes to Tulsa. And in year 4, Tulsa goes to Norman. That means the Cowboys and the Sooners are playing one time in 4 years in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. And the Golden Hurricane have one of the 2 not blue bloods, but Big 12 Power 5 schools from the state on their schedule. I'd soon play Tulsa than I would South Dakota or McNeese State.
I absolutely agree. And I think that, like you're saying, at least one of the other state schools should be playing Tulsa every single year. So whether it's OU or OSU, and if the schools want to come together and make schedules like that, like you're saying, I think that could be very beneficial for all 3 programs because, again, I remember when I was a kid growing up, OU and Tulsa used to play all the time. And I loved going to those games, and they were fun. It's entertaining. Whether it's at Tulsa, it's a short road trip that a lot of people are going to go to. When it's at Norman or at Stillwater, you know you're going to get good crowds regardless, especially you're going to get probably the biggest crowd from the opponent's team, at least
Absolutely.
in your non-conference schedule. And so I just think that those teams should play each other a lot. It's only a good thing for the state when all that money is staying in state. And I'm totally down with your system there. You only have to go to Tulsa once every 4 years, and you get to play them twice every 4 years, and that seems pretty fair to me.
That's exactly right. 1 road trip and 2 games in 4 years.
Absolutely.
I don't think that seems like a bad deal, KP.
Absolutely not. I agree with you guys' points completely. Especially the traveling part is what I think would be so exciting for all 3 fan bases, and that you get to go to an away game and be an away fan, and it's just a hour and a half, 2-hour drive, and it's probably pretty affordable. So I bet you there's some fans that get to go to their first away game that they don't get to do that because of the proximity. You can go in an afternoon and come back just like you do. It's like a normal OU or OSU game. Go down there for the day, come back in the evening. And that works all 3 ways for Stillwater fans going to Tulsa, Norman fans going to Tulsa, and Tulsa coming to both those places. I think it's just a great opportunity. The stadiums will look fuller. I think it's going to generate more money overall because of ticket sales, and there's going to be more butts in the seats. So more money generated, and I think it's just a win-win money-wise for all the schools. But again, like you said, Todd, could be a losing opportunity for OU and OSU if they ever have to worry about losing to that school, because that'll look real, real bad. But like you said, if they're worried about that, they have no business being out there in the first place.
Again, I mean, there's risk to anybody you play, I suppose.
Exactly. Anything can happen on
I
Saturday.
just would as soon keep the money in state and help
Definitely.
Tulsa build their program. And I know that's not what OU and OSU are about, helping Tulsa build their program. And people would go, I get sick of seeing Tulsa every year, every other year. Well, there's other teams on OU's schedule I get sick of hearing or watching too.
Yeah.
Like, do you not get sick of watching Kansas?
Oh, yeah, and that's every single year.
Every single year.
Ugh.
Just a thought. It'll never happen, but I think it's just a thought. And,
Who knows?
I'm for it.
You get all the state regions together, maybe they could make something happen.
who knows? We'll see. All right, one more thing on our first segment before we go to the break. We'll talk about our surprises and disappointments and also our Power 5 teams in Major League Baseball coming up in the next segment. But let's talk about Antonio Brown.
Hey guys, it's Casady from the future. We had a whole segment recorded about Antonio Brown, but as you are probably well aware, there has been a lot of news come out about that story and about that saga since we recorded the episode. So we just decided to go ahead and cut that part out of this episode. Now that we have more information, we will obviously update everyone on the story and give our thoughts about that whole saga next week. Also, our VIBELAND Sports fan poll question of the week was also about that issue, and it is no longer relevant. So we're not going to be having a fan poll question of the week this week. We'll get back on that as well. So we'll see you Tuesday.
Hi, we are VIBELAND. We are a creative network fostering and cultivating growth amongst a community of artists and innovators.
Here at HQ, we inspire young entrepreneurs to pursue their ideas and fulfill their highest ambitions. From producing albums to shooting multimedia content to our involvement with various charitable organizations within our local community, we seek to empower and spread knowledge through open source innovation.
We here at VIBELAND look forward to the future and hope you will join us on this exciting journey. Create, innovate, educate. VIBELAND.
Back at our final segment of episode 27 of VIBELAND Sports. Again, we encourage you to join us on social media at VIBELAND Sports on both Twitter and Instagram, and VIBELAND Sports on Facebook. All right, as we record this, Monday night games have not yet been completed. But let's talk about the Thursday night game and through yesterday on Sunday. Who were our biggest surprises and disappointments? Casady, we'll let you start first. Biggest surprise of the weekend.
Well, it's going to sound like a bit of a homer pick, but I'm going to say just the way that the Dallas Cowboys offense looked, just from top to bottom. They were able to put up 35 points and pretty much cruise the entire game, and Ezekiel Elliott just had a kind of an okay game. I mean, 13 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown was what Zeke had. I thought Dak Prescott went out and distributed the ball very well. Got all of the different wide receivers involved, multiple receivers.
That was the key. He threw 3 touchdown passes, but to 3 different receivers.
Yes, and that's what I'd really like to see was the ball was being spread out. Randall Cobb had an incredible game. I thought that Amari Cooper looked like just the guy that we expected him to be. Heck, Jason Witten scored a touchdown, so you know it's a great day for the Cowboys offense.
That was a nice little punctuation to that drive. I love it.
You know what's better than Jason Witten scoring a touchdown pass? Watching Monday Night Football and not hearing Jason Witten.
Yes, not having Jason Witten in the booth.
All right, Casady, surprise of the week, the way the Dallas Cowboys offense executed. KP, who was your biggest surprise?
Well, I want to piggyback off Casady for a second. I've got another answer, but Kellen Moore was a big surprise to me. I didn't know what to think of that hire. I wasn't a big fan of it, but he looked to have again, we're playing the Giants, but he looked to have a good command of that. So shout out to Kellen Moore. But my surprise, my answer is going to be the Baltimore Ravens dismantling of the Miami Dolphins. So I think I'm surprised in 2 ways. I'm surprised that an NFL team is tanking. I'm surprised that a NFL team put up 59 points in their opening weekend. I mean, Lamar Jackson, 5 touchdowns. Robert Griffin even came in the game, backed him up, went 6 for 6, 55 yards, and threw a touchdown himself too. So I was surprised to see as many backup quarterbacks get in action as they got this weekend. And I'm surprised that Robert Griffin's out there throwing touchdowns in week 1 of the NFL because his team is up and wins by 7 touchdowns. 59 points in an NFL game. You never see that. I was surprised just how awesome the Ravens offense was, but is it more the Ravens offense being awesome or the Miami Dolphins being that bad? Time will tell, but I think right now it's a little bit of both, but you got to give the Ravens credit too because they deserve it. I think you can say the
same thing about Dallas.
Sure.
Are the Cowboys as good as they looked or are the Giants as bad as they looked? I think it's both. I do not think the Giants' defense is any good at all, but the execution, the play calling by Kellen Moore, sometimes you just have to look away from who you're playing and look at your execution, and it was done very, in a very high manner. The other thing about the Dolphins, it is really sad. It's week 1. What do you sell your fan base?
Oh, man.
Nothing. There's no hope. They've all but said they want to tank.
It's brutal.
Yeah,
I mean, how would you even continue to root for a team that's intentionally looks like they're trying to finish at the bottom of the league?
And they can sell their fans and their audience on however they want to, but reports came out after this game. There are players in the locker room after the game calling their agents, telling them, trade me, get me out of here, help me get out of here, because they know, like, the coaches are doing their coach speak thing, but they know during the game what's going on, and they were so disgusted by what happened during the game, they asked to be traded after the game. So that's unreal, and that's surprising. And then again, Baltimore's offense, if you're an OU fan watching that bottom ticker after the game, the 2 names you see roll through are Marquise Brown, 4 catches, 147, 2 touchdowns, and a long 83-yard touchdown, and then Mark Andrews, 8 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown. So the OU guys are getting after it. And I said after the draft this year, the Baltimore Ravens, they're going to be a OU, OSU light with all the former Pokes and Sooners on both those squads. Are on that squad. So I'm excited to see what they do, and that offense is exciting. So I'm excited for
overall. KP goes with the Baltimore Ravens as his surprise. Cassidy, the Dallas Cowboy offense. From the Baltimore-Miami game is my biggest surprise, and it's Lamar Jackson. 17 of 20, 324 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he utilized a lot of his weapons. I think Lamar Jackson, and I've thought this for a long time, is going to have a much better year. And here's the reason why. If Mark Ingram can stay healthy, they have a running game that can really complement him as a passer. So many people think he's a running back playing quarterback. Well, he showed he has pretty good accuracy, and he can throw the football better than maybe a lot of the naysayers have said. So I thought Lamar Jackson through the air was a pleasant surprise. But again, I think he's going to end up having a surprising year all the way around for the Ravens, who I picked Cleveland. You guys picked Pittsburgh, I believe, for the division.
I had Cleveland.
Okay.
I had Cleveland.
Nobody's
Pittsburgh
talking
as a
about
wild
Baltimore,
card.
but
Nobody,
they buy
you're
and away look the biggest or the best of any of those teams in that division.
Big time.
In the first weekend. All right, disappointments. I'm going to start, and I'll go with Pittsburgh. Not that they lost at New England. There's no shame in going to Foxborough in a primetime game and losing to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. What shocked me and disappointed me was the manner in which they did it. They have lost a lot offensively over the last couple of years. They still have weapons. James Conner is a really good running back. Smith-Schuster is a really good wide receiver. And man, did New England just completely take their offense apart. And the defense looked like it was as far removed as the Steel Curtain days could possibly be. They looked bad. Now, again, I think New England had a lot to do with that, but that surprised me how bad the Steelers were.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I turned that game off fairly early, but just because I was like, this is, it's like watching somebody just beat a dead horse. So at some point, you just got to stop. And New England was on the attack the whole game, and they were able to just really expose every single flaw that Pittsburgh had on both sides of the ball. And my goodness, it was I did not expect the Steelers to be just an absolute great team this season, but my gosh, the way they came out, they just fell flat on their face, and it was not a great look for the Steelers for sure.
Casady, your disappointment.
Oh, I've got to go with the Cleveland Browns. I picked them to win that division. They go out and just get shellacked by the Titans, 43-13. Baker Mayfield, one touchdown, 3 interceptions. Odell Beckham, 7 catches for 71 yards. I mean, just really nothing got going for Cleveland that entire game. I don't think Tennessee is all that great, and they just were able to do whatever they wanted, especially in that second half. It just turned into whatever they wanted to do, they were able to execute at a very high level. And so just all the hype around the Browns coming into this season, there were people who are sounding the alarm bells saying, hey, let's see if the Cleveland can do it when they actually have a target on their back rather than when they're just the lovable guys who are just a scrappy bunch of young guns. And man, early signs, I know it's just one game, but it was pretty brutal to watch Cleveland and Baker just be awful.
It is one game, and I am still sticking by my pick that the Browns are going to win that division. But when you have been a loser habitually, and you have so many expectations, and you go out in week 1 and get destroyed and embarrassed on your home field, not the players, but don't think that fan base is not going, here we go again.
Oh, yes.
So it may be one game. When you're the Cleveland Browns and you have done nothing, your best record was 7-8-1 last year. You need all the positives to go right early, and they did not go right, KP, against the Tennessee Titans.
Absolutely not. They really shot themselves in the foot with all their penalties. That's the stuff that's what losing teams do, unfortunately. But, the good teams, the winning teams, they recognize that and correct it. And I think Baker's going to get them right. They said it after the game that it was pretty much unacceptable. And but, yeah, that's your early season jitters. You get it out of the way now. So I'm not going to freak out too much if I'm a Browns fan. But at the same time, if you're a Browns fan, it seems like same old Cleveland Browns. If you're an Oklahoma Browns fan, this might be surprising to you, but you got to remember and check yourself in the mirror. They've been the Cleveland Browns for a long time, and they've got a long and big shadow to get out of. But I think they have the ability to do that, and I think they will do that, but a very, very undisciplined start. Not what you like to see.
KP, who was your biggest disappointment of the weekend?
My biggest disappointment, hands down, it started on Thursday Night Football. That football game, that was a clunker and a really sucky
snooze fest.
10-3.
It was not good for fantasy football.
It was not good all the way around. I mean, it was boring. But yeah, 10-3. But my big disappointment is the Chicago Bears. I picked them to go very far this year. I thought that defense was going to carry them far, and the defense did a pretty good job. Aaron Rodgers, the new offense, only allowing 10 points. That's pretty good. But the real disappointment was Mitch Trubisky in that offense. Boring. Couldn't do a thing, could barely move the ball down the field to muster up 3 points. You've had all offseason to get hyped. You've known who the opponent's going to be. You know who you're playing against. You've had film on them forever. You've had all offseason to work on your offense and work on your game, and you muster 3 points. I mean, come on. I think the Dolphins even scored more than that, and they're tanking.
You guys both like Chicago, and I think that's a good pick to win the division. I took Minnesota and Green Bay out of that division to go to the playoffs, but that's why I don't trust the Chicago Bears is Mitchell Trubisky. He's a serviceable quarterback, but he's very, very limited in what he can do. And that's a shame if they waste that defense and the offensive talent they have with a quarterback that is very, very limited.
Yes, that defense is going to have to score points just about every week to give them a chance. I mean, the way that they're looking, they're completely inept on offense. They couldn't get anything going, and all of it comes down to your quarterback, Trubisky. Again, my gosh, not good to say the least. And you just don't like to come out in week 1 and put out that big of a clunker, and I think it stuck out even more so that it happened on Thursday, and so then that was all that anyone really had a chance to talk about until the game's on Sunday afternoon.
It does appear from that game, though, and I know it's a very small sample size, but it does appear that the Packers finally have gotten Aaron Rodgers a defense. They were very, very impressive. Very impressive. Let's move on to Major League Baseball. Our top 5 teams as we're down to the final 4 weeks of the regular season. Go ahead, KP.
Well, my top 5 power rankings, I've got the Astros at number 1. Just been consistently dominant all year. Justin Verlander threw a no-hitter a week or so ago, so no signs of him slowing down at all. They're just, in my opinion, the team to beat. Right behind them, I do have them in a close second, is the Dodgers. They are awesome right now, offensive powerhouse. That bullpen and pitching rotation is one of the best in the league right now. And then number 3, I've got the New York Yankees. Right behind them, I've got the home run hitting record-setting Minnesota Twins. And at number 5, I have the Braves right now. They are hot right now. They just got done having a 13-game home win streak. They're 15-3 of their last 3 weeks. They have had a 9-game. They just came off a 9-game win streak. So I vote them as number 5 power team. They're going to be hot. Watch how they finish this season, what they do in the playoffs. I think they can make some noise. But that's my top 5. Astros 1, Dodgers 2, Yankees 3, Twins 4, Braves 5.
Okay, I have those exact 5 teams.
I do too.
In a little bit different order.
Same.
I've got the Astros, number 1. I clearly think they're the most complete team. I think their pitching is better than the Dodgers. They have a league-leading 240 run differential. That's the best in baseball. Barely ahead of the Dodgers, who are plus 233 in run differential. I have the Los Angeles Dodgers second. In the 3 spot, I like the Atlanta Braves. We're playing in the present now. And as KP said, 15-3 of their last 3 weeks. That's pretty good.
Not bad.
The New York Yankees come in 4th in my power rankings. The Yankees still, in my opinion, have question marks on the mound. Mm-hmm. Now, offensively, they're as good as any team in baseball. They just this past weekend, and think about this, guys, hit their 268th home run of the season.
Jeez.
That is a Yankees single-season home run record. Think about all the great offensive teams they've had and the great players. 268 home runs, a single-season home run record for the Yankees, and there's still 4 weeks to go in the regular season. And at number 5, I have the Minnesota Twins. They're going to win the AL Central, and they very well could even climb higher in my poll later in the year because they finished with 13 games against Detroit, the White Sox, and Kansas City. They really have a chance to get separation and maybe eventually push towards a top 1 or 2 seed in the American League.
Absolutely, and it's going to be great seeing that coming down the stretch here. I have, again, those same 5 teams, but I have the Dodgers number 1 right now. Honestly, I like the way that the Dodgers are, just clubbering everybody in their division. It's a shoe-in that they're going to win their division and very easily do so. So I've got them at number 1. I think the Astros are, you could call them 1A. I think both of those teams, it's the best team from each league right now. And for all the reasons that you guys are talking about, the Astros are such a complete team on the mound, and the defense has been fantastic this season, and the offense has just kept pace. So I think the Astros, are very good. Then I have the Braves at number 3, and I just think the streak they've been on and the way that they have been tearing it up, hard for me not to put them up there pretty high. I've got very high expectations for the Braves going into the postseason, and if they can just keep this momentum rolling into October, I think that people are going to be surprised at what Atlanta's able to do. I have the Yankees number 4. And again, for some of the reasons that you mentioned, Todd, I just think there's too many inconsistencies with the Yankees. I mean, to hit the way that they have been, and to not be farther away, pulling out in that not only the division, but I think in the entire American League, they could really be the best team in the AL. But you don't know what you're going to get on the mound from night to night. And every once in a while, they just have a bit of a clunker that they throw out that you're going, how in the world did they lose to that team in the fashion that they did? So for that reason, I have them 4th. And then the Twins, number 5. They are going to win that division, and I think they have a chance, like you're saying, Todd, to move up the AL standings by the end of the season. They've got a lot of teams on that schedule that are just not really going to give them much.
Bad.
Oh man, they're not going to give them much of a matchup, and so for that reason alone, they have to be up there in that top 5, and they've been one of the 5 best teams in baseball, I think, for most of the season. So.
Amazing. We did not talk about this before we came on. Same 5 teams.
Yeah.
Casady
that
and
was
I
weird.
are almost in identical order, and KP's not far as well. But again, we have all 5, the Astros, Dodgers, Minnesota, the Yankees, and the Braves in our top 5 of the VIBELAND Sports Baseball Power Poll. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 27. I want to remind you, coming up next week, we'll talk to Grant Gower, longtime high school football coach and currently the director of officials for the OSSAA. We'll talk with him next week on episode 28. Gus, another episode in the books. See you next week.
Sounds great.
I'll be here.
Great to
All
see
right.
you guys.
For Casady and for KP, I'm Todd Miller. We'll see you next time on another edition of VIBELAND Sports, a weekly presentation of VIBELAND Inc.